Yeah, let's first address the elephant in the room. The sound is probably shit and my animation is very basic, but this is my first video, so let's do it anyway. This is like a spin-off from a video made by Lifting Vegan Logic, in which he talks about the definition of veganism as it is defined today by the Vegan Society.
Veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose, and by extension, promotes the development and use of animal-free alternatives for the benefit of animals, humans, and the environment. In dietary terms, it denotes the practice of dispensing with all products derived wholly or partly from animals.
Now the main point of LVL's video is that the current definition of veganism doesn't support the extension of human rights to animals, the way I think it should, and Lifting Vegan Logic is giving an example right here.
Imagine in the human case that there was a condition that 5 people were suffering from, and we could forcibly conduct a trial on a singular healthy person, which would result in their death, that would give us the cure for the other 5 people's condition. Would we consider the forcible testing to be an unjustifiable human rights violation? Of course. But under the Vegan Society's definition for veganism, if this were to be a situation with cows, it would be vegan to conduct the testing. So here lies my first issue with the Vegan Society's definition. It doesn't seem to run as a logical extension of human rights to animal rights.
With this example, it's clear to me that the current definition leads vegans to actually accept and support some of the terrible things done to animals, and I wanted to zoom in on biomedical research to hopefully make LVL's point even stronger. But first, a bit of background on how research is done. So there are 2 relevant types of trials: a preclinical trial, which is animal testing, and a clinical trial, which is human testing. Now, as the name suggests, preclinical trial comes before clinical trial and in most cases is mandatory. In case of clinical trials, the study protocol will be reviewed by the Institutional Review Board, IRB for short. IRB will consider the protocol through the lens of human rights and welfare. This means that not necessarily no harm would come to the volunteer. In some cases, some harm is justified if the volunteer is well compensated and the damage is not that big, or it's a terminal patient that has nothing to lose in case intervention doesn't work and everything to win in case it does. But never will the board agree to a protocol that infringes on human rights. That's what the board was created for, to protect human rights. For instance, in case of human subjects who are incapable to give informed consent, like a child or a mentally incapacitated person, consent should be sought from a guardian who has the subject's best interest in mind. Not so in case of animal trials, where in the best of circumstances, if the board reviews the protocol at all, which varies by country, it will seek to grant welfare to animals subjected in the trial, but never rights. For instance, most regulations as specified in good laboratory practice are concerned with collecting proper data from animal testing, and things like feeding them proper food or cleaning their cages is done for better data, not for animals' sake. I'll give you another example. In some countries, the best practice to terminate the animal from the trial is considered to be gassing or decapitation, but no animal will be considered as a subject on their own and thus worthy of not be terminated. No consent is sought. Well, because it's impossible, there's no way to do so, and that's kind of my point. In every case, animals are volunteered and not volunteers, and anything done to them is to benefit humans. Back to veganism and LVL's video and his point about extending human rights to animals.
We simply don't consider these accounts of human murder and testing to be pro-human rights or the most human rights thing for you to do in those situations, because those accounts of murder and testing qualify clearly as rights violations. But the currently held vegan definition by the Vegan Society allows for these things toward animals and does not take into account whether actions are rights violations or not.
Now, I completely agree. The word possible needs to be clarified, because if animals' basic rights aren't considered, then it can be argued that most animal testing cannot be replaced. Oxford paper on animal testing stipulates that there is not yet a replacement for it because the body is terribly complex and testing on a similar being to a human can reproduce all the interactions a drug can make in the body. Now, allow me to empathize with my own species for a second and say that yes, practically there is no replacement for animal trials at this point. Some of the technologies are coming very close to the point of eliminating animal trials, but it's not there yet. For instance, the technology of organoids combined with microfluidic systems can replace some of the animal studies and does, but it's far from being perfect. Furthermore, most medical advancements are made by testing on animals. All of the drugs, as we know, but also things like transplants. To see how the transplanted organ acts in the body, they first put it in an animal. That said, I want to make this very clear. Useful does not mean moral. And for the same reasons we don't test on humans the way we test on animals, we shouldn't test on animals the way we test on animals, because those are living, feeling, thinking creatures. How can we justify sacrificing their lives for our own gain? And in summary, the people who are the guardians of animals are not keeping the best interest in mind. So there must be a difference between a human child, for instance, and the animal, who both are powerless to resist, both cannot give consent, and need a guardian to consider the best interest. I also have a problem with the word practicable that is so vague that it legitimizes all animal testing. If, again, extension of human rights to animals is not considered, if testing on animals is less expensive than on non-sentient analogs, then it's vegan, isn't it? The thing is, this doesn't work when replacing the victim, because even in cases where the trial is done specifically to benefit an animal species, some of that species will be terminated, which we would never consider in case of humans. Selfishly, I feel for the humankind, I really do, but morally, I couldn't find the difference between humans and animals. Let me know if you have. I'm done now, but I don't know what to do. How do I...